so we're very happy to have Cyril Elouard today to visit and to give us our IQS seminar. I want to give a brief introduction for Cyril for those of you that don't know him. So Cyril was raised as a Frenchman, a proper Frenchman. He was raised in the town of Marseille, a seafaring city on the south of France. He did his studies with Alexis Ofev in the University of Grenoble and worked on topics in quantum thermodynamics for his PhD. And then he came and worked with me at the University of Rochester as a postdoc. And so we had many very productive years, lots of great papers and new discoveries. And he spent some time actually here at Chapman when I was on sabbatical here. So he spent a full year in Chapman as well. So he's not a stranger to this place. And then he went back to France and served as a postdoc both in Paris and in Lyon. And now I'm happy to say he just found a new tenure track faculty position in the city of Nancy, in the region of Lorraine. And so congratulations to Cyril. So Cyril is going to talk to us today about his new research in quantum thermodynamics. And he'll be here all week long. So please, I encourage everyone to make an appointment with him and talk to him. He'll be here through Friday. So Cyril, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction and the nice invitation to come here. Yeah, very happy for that. And so so this is work that I've been doing with so Camille Latune, who is a postdoc working with me. And so in Lyon, where I was until recently, and I'm moving to Nancy actually next month. Right? So and so yes, the topic is trying to look at energy exchanges between so arbitrary quantum systems, so say autonomous quantum systems. The idea that you can do machines that are where every pieces are all quantum system. You don't want necessarily to have some pieces that are like external classical controllers or this kind of thing. And see when you describe everything quantum mechanically, if you can still formulate the constraint under the form of the law of thermodynamics. And so we have proposed an approach to do this. If I have time, I can at the end also briefly present one of the application, let's say, of this approach, which is a collaboration with the group of Karim Lehur in École Polytechnique. And so just to start with the context, we all know that for like macroscopic systems, we can formulate the law of thermodynamics. They are very helpful to optimize the performances of machines, we know to formulate them when all the pieces are macroscopic. This is the historic approach to thermodynamics, and just to have them here, we can formulate the two laws of thermodynamics. Like the first law, that is the energy conservation, or the energy change of your working medium can be split into work and heat exchanges, and you can write the second law with real constraints about what you can do, and under the form of the change of the entropy of the system minus the heat flow is positive. And so since then there have been a lot of extension of this, and one first surprising result was that actually you don't need the working system to be large to have these constraints or similar constraints coming, and you can just formulate similar laws for the case where the working medium can be a small individual system that can be far from equilibrium, far from what we call the thermodynamic limit. Also, we get new phenomena because of this, which is that you have fluctuations around the average laws. And then, if you can have one single system, why not having a quantum system? And this is something that motivated a lot of studies in your field of quantum thermodynamics. So, trying to look at what comes when you have the quantum properties inside the working medium, and so like entanglement, quantum superposition, squeezing, and some of them can be seen as new resources, some sources of noise, of reversibility. So something we studied a lot with our group is when you have quantum measurements as a tools you can use to do engines. And but there are also studies about entanglement, squeezing, and so on. Yeah, and so to study this kind of machines where you include quantum effects, you have to understand the performances. You have to find a way to express law of thermodynamics, the constraints on the machines, right? And so there are different approaches to do this. One of the very general is maybe Esposito co-authors from 2010. And but one of the main limitations that were interesting us is that in this case, only the working medium is really a quantum system. Both, let's say, the sources of work, they are treated as really ideal in the sense that they are treated as classical systems. So you don't describe them as physical systems, but you just say that the Hamiltonian of the working medium will be time dependent. And so it's like an external ideal controller, right? And and at the same time, there are a lot of studies that start to look at what happens if you have a radio quantum system as a source of energy. So it can become entangled with a system of interest. For example, this is called quantum batteries. And so you can wonder what are the constraints for this kind of system. You have the equivalent of the law of thermodynamics. Another limitation is that, so in this engine, you need sources of heat as well. And generally, we can formulate the law of thermodynamics by having pure sources of heat. We take, so in this context, it's large quantum systems that are at thermal equilibrium, and then all the energy exchanges with these large quantum systems is assumed to be heat. But this might be questionable. Now, if we start to have a smaller quantum system here, so they may start at equilibrium, but when they interact with the system of interest, they can become out of equilibrium, right? And now maybe they will behave more like a source of work than a source of heat. So, or they can become at least a hybrid source of work and heat, right? So all these cases that may occur when you look at small quantum autonomous machines, they are not really included in this existing formalism, and so this is what we wanted to address. And so, yeah, we can also think of it as continuing the generalization process that's starting with all macroscopic systems, then replacing the working medium by a small classical system and a small quantum system. And so why not in the end having just only small quantum system, at least arbitrary quantum system interacting, and see what we can say about it. So this is the outline of my talk. I will first recall, so this one of the most general way of formulating the law of thermodynamics when you have a quantum working medium with ideal sources of heat and work. And then I will start from it to explain our approach and two applications that we can deal with our formalisms, which are very small thermal machines where all the pieces are quantum systems. And yeah, something about a bus that is it's not really a bus anymore. Okay. So let's say we're interested in this situation. So we have a quantum system, and so something that we expect to be a thermal bus. So it will be another quantum system, so a very large one that will be in thermal equilibrium initially. And so at the initial time, they are in factorized states, and the thermal bus is in a thermal equilibrium distribution like this. And we assume that evolve unitarily because they are coupled. So there is a joint Hamiltonian for the system and the bus, with some coupling Hamiltonian here. And we include the possibility to have some work exchanges from another battery, only by having a time dependence in the Hamiltonian. So we say that this Hamiltonian can be time dependent in a controlled way. And this can include different cases, right? So it's mostly inherited from the classical views that we have from work exchanges. So you can have a kind of piston that is moving. So you can, for example, change the energy speaking of a qubit, let's say, and even though it's the source of work is treated as a classical system, you can still have some, let's say, quantum consequences on the evolution of A. For example, it can include the case of a coherent drive that will induce coherent transformation of the system A, right? But there is no entanglement between system A and the source of work. So we have these assumptions, and then just these two assumptions allow us to derive some form of the law of thermodynamics. So what was done in here is to say that you look at the change of energy of the system, and also know because the system is small, so the coupling, the energy with the mass can be non-negligible. So you also have to consider it. So you look at the change of energy of the system and plus the energy stored in the coupling. And you find that it's equal to two terms. So one of the two is the total change of energy of the system A and B. So everything that is coming from outside because of the time dependence of the Hamiltonian. And this is what you can call the work. So another way to write this is to say that it's the total energy change of due to the time dependence of B. Right? So the total energy change of the energy stored in H of T. And you can also write it this way, is related to the time dependence, to the time derivative of the Hamiltonian. And then you have also the energy change of system B. And in this context, so you call it heat provided by the mass. And one justification to say that indeed it's relevant to call this heat flow is because you can write a second law that goes with it. And you can prove that the change of entropy of system A, yes, minus beta times the heat, is positive. And this, you don't have to make more assumption, it's really an identity. And it's valid whatever the coupling strength you have here. Yeah, it's also useful to have another writing of the second law, which is to say that the work spent to drive the system has to be larger than the change of free energy, and because you have this, energy that can be stored in the coupling, it still appears here as well. So, and in the case of if you go to the more usual limit where the coupling energy is negligible, you find back the usual way of writing the second law, just in terms of free energy. So.
Yeah. You say that it's valid for any coupling strength.
Yes.
But how do you know that? How do you test that?
So it's
I mean the energy stored in the coupling regime.
So yeah, you don't have to make any weak coupling assumption. You don't have to use master equation or this kind of thing. It's really something you derive from the unitary evolution.
So you don't quantify them now. You're not quantifying the energy stored in the region. It's just
yeah. It just that when deriving this result, you don't need to make any assumption about the strength.
Yeah, I was wondering. So when you write this joint unitary evolution, the Bath Hamiltonian doesn't seem to be time dependent, but the next line is time dependent. Is that like?
Oh yeah, no, this is notation. Okay, so here I assume that the Bath is not Hamiltonian is not time dependent, is time independent. But here, this is just by this I mean like the expectation value at time. Yeah, but to be consistent with here I should not write. Yeah, I should not.
So the state can be time dependent.
The state is time dependent. State of the Bath system. Yeah. Okay, and so yeah, to go further, it's interesting to look at how this is derived actually, this result, and so what you can prove, so the identity, the way you prove that the entropy production is positive is by writing this this sum as two positive quantum informational quantities. So two relative entropies actually. So first to get the mutual information that build up between system A and B. So initially they are in a factorized state, so the mutual information is 0. And at the end of after interacting during some time, the mutual information will be positive or null, right? So so the variation will always be positive. And so this depends on whether the system A and B becomes correlated or not. And you have a second term, which is how much the state of the bath has changed since the initial equilibrium state. And so if we have a large bath, it's tempting to think that this will be small, right? But actually, it's because it's accumulating in time, it can be the term that's the biggest of the two. Right? So it has been tested in some specific examples, and then you can see that it's actually the term that will dominate on the long time limit. And even if the coupling is very weak, this is really something important.
Sorry here, Cyril, D is a relative entropy?
So yes, D is a relative entropy.
Okay. Oh yeah, okay, good.
So it's, I mean, so both terms are positive. And so what is interesting is that you see that here, any change of the state of B is considered as entropy production in this context. And this is something that this was kind of our starting point, because we think that it's kind of an overestimate, because you can imagine that cases, for example, let's say that A is pushing away system B in a deterministic way. Like, for example, it's displacing, if B is harmonic mode, it's displacing it away. This will more like something you would call warp, right? Because then you have this displaced state of B, you can do a deterministic force on A at later time, this kind of thing. And so if these kind of things happen, not all these processes should be treated as an entropy production. Right? Here we can see that there might be some refined description that takes into account that the way how the system B is transformed should be taken into account in some way. This is kind of missing here. And so the second thing we wanted to generalize is that here we start with the thermal state of B, but maybe we can just, if we want to model an autonomous battery, for example, we will want to start in another state and see work exchange emerging from this. So to do these two things, so we consider the situation. So now system B is initialized in any state, right? And they are still start in the factorial state, and they have a joint Hamiltonian, and this time we take it time independent, because if there is some work exchange, we want to see it coming just from the initial state of B. And so the approach we took is the following. So let's say that you have some state from B initially, or type T. What you can do is that you can always associate to it a thermal state. So it's a different state, but it's related to the state of B with the fact that it has the same volume entropy. So this is the condition you take. So you have this new thermal state, and you can always do this identification uniquely. Right? You can always find, so if you want, it defines a unique value of the temperature that you have to have the same entropy as the initial state of B. And once you do this, you have this thermal state, and you can look at the energies that are stored in it, and it will be a part of the total energy of B that is smaller than the total energy of B. And this is something that we call the thermal energy. And so we can do this for the initial state of B and for the final state of B, and we can look at the variation of this thermal part of the energy. And this is what we call the heat provided by system B. So the first justification for, so yeah, now I will give you a bit more details about what this is an interesting definition. So the first thing is that it will always fulfill the second law. So once you compute this quantity, you can prove that it's always positive, and it's the same thing. You don't have to make any more assumptions, it's already an identity. And so this means that what we identify as work is the change of the rest of the energy of B. So any energy that is not, that you cannot attribute to the thermal state at same entropy, when you consume it, it's worse work. This is what we say. And this is, okay. So let me give you some more properties about this. So the first thing is that if you look at, so how you prove this, that it's positive. So you see that you have the two terms that look like the one we had before. So you still have the mutual information, and you have another one. And you see that what you look, it's at this time it's a relative entropy between the thermal state that corresponds to the final time and the initial one. So in some sense, it's like you have a smaller distance, because instead of going from the initial thermal state to the final state of B, now you go to only the thermal part of this, right? So it's and that's a way to be a bit more precise about what you call entropy production. You only take the part that, that corresponds to changing the thermal, the thermal background of. And if you go from here, from the initial state to another one by, let's say, a unitary way, so something that preserves entropy, this won't contribute to this distance, and you won't get entropy production because of it. So that's kind of the intuition behind it. And another interesting property of this definition of heat is that it's just connected to the variation of the entropy of, it's proportional to the variation of the monument entropy of the system B. So you have this temperature that we defined before, and you find that it's just, the change of entropy is proportional to the change of heat with this inverse temperature. So it might be another way to define this, this heat flow. So then we can look at some usual limits. And so one that is quite natural is that if you assume that system B is always at thermal equilibrium, maybe with a time-dependent temperature, but always in a thermal state. So it would be a kind of ideal bath that always thermalize quickly to and if you do this, you find that indeed you have a pure source of heat. So what we call work is always zero, and you only have the energy provided by system B is only heat. So this is a kind of a very reasonable definition of a pure ideal source of heat. So we have seen the properties of this what we have called heat, and let's see what we have called work, right? Everything else. So the first thing you can notice is that by combining the second law and the energy conservation for system B, what you find is this. So this means that all these resources, this energy that we have called work, you can consume it to increase the free energy of system A. So this is kind of a first intuition to why you say it's reasonable to say that this is work. It's really something you can pay to, for example, decrease the entropy of system A. You can consume any of these resources. So let's try to survey a little bit what are in these resources, right? So the first thing we can try to connect to is there is this notion of ergotropy that has been introduced, and that it's a way, it's seen as a way to quantify work for quantum systems, right, in the context of quantum systems. And so the idea is that you look at the energy you can exchange with the system by unitary transformations. So for example, you have some system B, and you look at, so you try to apply unitaries to decrease its energy, to extract energy from it, and you maximize over all the possible unitaries to get, and you say that the energy you can extract in a unitary way is the ergotropy stored in system B. And so to have a kind of physical example, so let's say that we have a two-level system, an atom, for example, in the waveguide. So the waveguide will be a collection of many modes, right? And if it's initially it's in a vacuum or in a thermal state, okay, we expect it to behave like a heat bath, to exchange heat with a qubit. But we can also do, and this is something that is done experimentally, you can also have one of the modes of the waveguide that is displayed, that is in the coherent state. And then we know that it will start to coherently drive the qubit. So it's really something we want to call an exchange of work. And so if we try to look at the energy content in the waveguide, you can compute its ergotropy, and we find that the energy due to this displacement, that displays this mode, this will be precisely the ergotropy of the waveguide. So in some sense, you have this. So you have this ergotropy of the waveguide that's consumed to provide some work to the qubit, right? So this is it seems natural that ergotropy should be included in this work, and indeed it's part of what we have called work. If you using our definition, you find that this ergotropy will all contribute to this this work content. But what is interesting is that it's not all of it. There is more than just the ergotropy stored in the system B that can be consumed to decrease, for example, the entropy of system A. So this might sound a bit strange initially. But actually, it's natural because the evolution of system A and system B is not unitary anymore. Right? They are interacting, so they don't have to evolve unitarily. So it's normal that you can extract more from system B than just the ergotropy. And so one way to see that identifying ergotropy to work doesn't work, right? It's because you cannot write the second law. If you would try to write the second law like this, you always can find counterexamples telling you that okay, if you identify work with a channel of ergotropy, you won't be able to get the second law. You have counterexamples, and so actually, what's the right? So when you look at what we have defined as work, you can identify it with two other quantities that are existing in the literature. So one of them is a kind of asymptotic version of the ergotropy. So it's ergotropy you will have in infinitely many copies of the same system B. So imagine that instead of having one system B, you have infinitely many copies of system B, each in the same state. So you have a factorized state like this, and you are able to do global operation on all of these copies, so global unitaries. And now you look at the energy per copy that you can extract with these global unitaries, and you find that it matches this notion of work that we have introduced. So this kind of, so it's basically all the energy but the one stored in the thermal state. So this is one way to retrieve this, and the other way that may be more relevant because we have in practice we have only one copy right in this setup. So maybe one other definition, other matching that is more relevant is that it corresponds to you can interpret this as a change of free energy. So to prepare the state of thermal equilibrium. So you have this state of B and system B that's not a thermal state, and you want to prepare it so in an adiabatic way, and you will have to pay this amount of energy to bring to the system B out of equilibrium. So this is a kind of also natural way to interpret this quantity. So one interesting question is, when is this different from the ergotropy? So when is it more than in this work more energy than just ergotropy? And so the first thing is that you need, if you have a qubit, it will match. The property will match. The ergotropy and this generalized ergotropy will be the same thing. So you need at least 3 levels. And what you need is to have the passive state, the one you get once you have applied the optimal unitary here, which will be a state with a population that is decreasing when you increase the energy. This state, it has to be non-thermal. So it means that, for example, you have if you look at the ratio of a population between the state 2 and 3 of a qubit and the state 1 and 2 and 1, or sorry, 2 and 1 and 1 and 0, you won't get a unique temperature that Boltzmann distribution, right, between the two. So for example, here you have in between these two levels, you have a kind of, if you wanted to define a temperature, it would be like infinite temperature. But between these two you would have a finite temperature. So it's like if you want the temperature depends on where you are in the energy diagram. So once you have this,
But these are all non-thermal states, right, Cyril? You're just looking at the ratio of populations as the logarithm as a proxy for temperature. Is that right?
exactly. So it's just a way to, yeah. So it's not, that's why I put quotation mark. It's not what you would usually call temperature, but let's say if you wanted if you try to identify the temperature
Sort of the
transition,
closest
yeah,
thing.
the closest thing, you will find that it depends on. But that's actually a good way to have intuition on why you can extract work from such a thing, because this is what we are saying, right? We are saying that if you have zero ergotropy but non-zero generalized ergotropy, you can extract work out of it. And so if you have this, so you see that if you are able to connect to this transition only, you will feel like you are connecting to a system with infinite temperature. If now you connect to this one, to this transition later on, let's say, you will feel that you are connected to a bath with colder temperature. And so by connecting locally to this transition and then to this one, you can kind of make an engine out of it. You can feel a kind of temperature gradient, temperature bias. So that's kind of the strategy that can be used, and we found an example based on this, where you can extract some work from a passive state, which is non-thermal, right? So that's one of the interesting outcomes of our approach. So like for the source of heat, we can try to think that when we have an ideal source of work, and actually it's when system A and B are at any time in a factorized state. So if you make this assumption, what you find is that so system A will evolve unitarily with an effective time-dependent Hamiltonian that depends on the state of B. So this is a way to retrieve the classical limit of where you can eliminate system B from the description when they don't get entangled. And in this case, what we find that all definition of work just correspond to this the usual time derivative of the effective Hamiltonian that is ruling the dynamics of A. So yeah, this is also another way to come back to usual situations. But now, yeah, if we recap, in the general case, we have both, right? And so we can, so as I showed you just before, we can write the thermodynamics for system A, let's say, so the second law for system A, and you see that what appears here as the heat is the change of energy of system B, right? That is involved in the thermodynamics for system A. But because both are small quantum systems, you can also reverse the roles, right? It's symmetric, and you can write so the appropriate picture is more something like this. And you can write the thermodynamics for system B and consider A as the energy source for most way. And you can even combine them to get something like a kind of Clausius law or whatever, which is telling you about the heat part of the heat part of the exchange, and it's connected to the local temperature of A and B, which are in turn just computed from their initial entropies we explained before. So okay, so also something. So far I only presented for two systems, but actually you can have n system interacting and arbitrary configurations, and this all generalizes very nicely. So you just assume that you have a global unitary evolution, and then the heat flow just sum up. Right? So you can have also a second law for every system in the network, right? Or you can have a global Clausius law like this. So that's a nice thing, because now you can use, you can try to apply this result to look at kind of realistic version of engines. So when you, instead of having pure sources of heat and work, you will have, for example, let's say a battery that is so it's a system that is mainly in a state able to provide work, but because it will get a little bit entangled with system one, there will be a little bit of heat coming also in the description, inevitably. And the same thing, you might have a system that you intend to be bass, but they will become a bit out of equilibrium during the operation of the engine, and so they will store a little bit of the work, and this might be a source of inefficiency, for example, because part of the work you want to extract is consumed to displace these bases out of equilibrium. So this is the kind of situation you can handle. The other one that is the simplest thing to, because obviously this might be a bit complicated if you have large systems to simulate. This is the challenge. But let's say to start with very simple things, you can also look at very small engines, right? And so something we looked at is that even by considering just 2 qubits that you put in contact, because if you take a non-thermal state for one of the two, it will behave as a hybrid source of work and heat. You can actually have very small engines where you just have 2 quantum systems that interact, and they will perform a kind of thermodynamic task. For example, consuming some work stored in one of the 2 qubits to make a fridge, so to cool down the colder of the 2 qubits and heat up the hotter of the hottest of the 2 qubits. So that's so let's see how this is possible. So if we just assume that we have a system A that is in a thermal state, and the effective temperature of system B is larger, so it means that the beta is smaller. So we put this, we can look at when it is possible to cool down system A. So it means that the heat will flow from system, there will be a positive heat leaving system A. And so when we put our relations, thermodynamic relation, we find that this will occur if you have if you are able to consume work either from the system A. So initially there were some non-thermal features in system A that you can consume, or in system B, or in the coupling. These are the possible resources that you can consume to have this heat flow going in the reverse direction of the temperature balance. And what is interesting is that the conversion ratio is just the usual Carnot efficiency, right? So here's the Carnot coefficient of performance. So it's still present, it still appears here in this nanoscopic quantum machine. Okay. Just to be specific, you can, for example, have 2 qubits with this kind of coupling, so kind of exchange extension coupling. And then what we find that so you can, so system A we assume is in a thermal state, and system B, so we take a thermal state to set the temperature, and then to charge it a little bit with non-thermal resources, we make a small rotation, an angle phi. So now we have this. So the temperature sets the entropy, or the other way around. The entropy corresponds to this temperature beta B of 0, and then we have put some coherences that can be consumed to make the refrigerator work. And so when we let the 2 systems evolve, indeed, you find that after a while there will be heat extracted from the system A, so work consumed in system B. So the system B has received the heat, and there is what you find is that there is a little bit of work stored in system A. So it means that you are cooling it down, but at the same time you are putting it in a slightly non-thermal state. So this is kind of a source of inefficiency for the machine. And indeed, you can compute the coefficient of performance, and you find it's more or less constant, but much smaller than the maximum. And this is mostly due to this fact that you are charging qubit A, even if you don't want to, right? So of course the machine is actually, because it's a very small system, the machine is periodic, right? The evolution will be so as if you wait too much, the cooling goes back to 0. If you stop the machine here, for example, you won't have any cooling, and it won't accumulate, right? Because once you have consumed your resource, nothing else happens, right? So if you want to have something really periodic, not periodic, something that's a steady state, right? A machine, you would have to have at least one of the two systems that's infinite, right? You would have probably an infinite battery and an infinite mass, or at least bigger, right, than a qubit. But that's it's another part of the story. And you can also look at the reverse operation, that is an engine. So in this case, you start with the two systems in thermal states, and you let them evolve. And what you want is, the goal is to charge qubit A, so to put him in a non-thermal state by consuming a little bit of the thermal energy from the bus. And so this can work also. So we find also some parameters that some coupling that allows to do it. And you see it's a bit more messy, but you have to here the extraction of work occurs, but at like very specific time. So the machine is really not optimized. Okay, we don't do a systematic optimization. So maybe there are better regimes, right? But at least it's working in principle, right?
Sorry, so what are you doing to make these jagged curves there? What's going on that's different from the previous slide?
So here it's a different coupling. Okay, didn't write it down. But okay, here we have, so we are initializing the two qubit in thermal states.
Yeah.
And we just couple them with so I think it was you need coupling in both sigma x, and sigma y, sigma y. Okay. These two couplings to be on, and you let them evolve, right? And so what you see, so QB is so the system, the hot qubit is providing some positive heat. So this is the red curve. It's going very high here, and part of it is converted into work stored in system A. And part of it is also stored in the coupling energy, so which is one of the sources of efficiencies of the engine. And you see indeed the efficiency is below the maximum.
What do you mean by charging? Do you mean that you're you're putting the excited state in?
So it's putting non-thermal energy. So you have this. So we have this. If you remember, you have this definition of the thermal energy, which is the one corresponding to the thermal state at the same entropy. Mm-hmm. And any energy you put on top of this, so its work is something you can consume to as an exponential of work.
So you get more than what you get from thermal population.
So you get
like. So I just wanted to understand what do you mean by charging here.
Yes. So for qubits, it's simple. It just means that you are putting some coherencies, or you are inverting the population. To have, So one of the two is occurring. Right. So as long as this W, this purple curve is non-zero, it means that you have your qubit is not anymore. You can't interpret your qubit as a thermal state of the initial domain. So, and something interesting we find is that, so you see here, so in engines where we have this feature that there is a trade-off between efficiency and power, right? And it's coming from the fact that it's basically another way to see the second law, right? If you produce a lot of entropy, the efficiency of the engine will be small. And here, so in an autonomous way, how can you change? How can you vary the speed of the engine? The only thing you can do is to change the initial state of the qubits or the strength of the coupling between them. Some parameter like this, and the engine will autonomously make the stroke of the cycle faster or shorter. Right? So if here the stroke, if you want, that corresponds to the engine, we can see it by the time at which this spike is occurring, this form extraction is occurring. And so by changing the intensity of the coupling, we can make this, stroke being faster or shorter. So this is what we did here. And what we find is that, as expected, if you make the transformation shorter, the efficiency is going down. So this is when you go from blue to black, you are speeding up the energy exchange, but the efficiency of the process is going down. So how much time do I have?
Another 10 minutes?
10 minutes, okay. So I can just speak about another, it's another application of this approach. So here I was speaking about, okay, we can study very small quantum machines, that's one thing. So the other thing we can wonder is that, okay, even if we have a big, so we go back maybe to the same framework as before, so where we have system B is a large quantum system, initially in thermal equilibrium, and we can wonder, can we find the description, can we take into account the fact that the interaction with system A will perturb system B, and this can, we might not want to account all of this for as with heat, right? So maybe there is some work to find in this. And so, as I told you before, so we have this, so basically the second, yeah. So what, if we, in the earlier formalisms, all the changes of energy of B was considered as heat, but in ours, we have, we subtract from it this generalized arbitrary. So it means that if at the end of the transformation there is some generalized arbitrary in B, then we say, okay, there is some work that will be performed by system A on system B. It's not only a heat action. Right? And so when does it have a consequence, a practical consequence? It's because now if you want to make a transformation that has a cost, that should cost this amount of free energy, this will be the minimum work cost, then because you are putting some work in B, then you will have to pay more. Right? You have to pay the driving work to do the transformation will be the change of free energy of A, the only thing you should have to pay, but a bit more because you are also putting some work in the bus. Right? So so you might want to. So it's important to know when you can when this will occur, right? And so one way to investigate this is to look at specific models. Right? And so, for example, the case of the spin boson model, so where the bus is a collection of bosonic modes. So you have typically, so it's here you have some Hamiltonian for the bus, and the coupling so you have some coupling operator for the system and some coupling operator for the bus, which is typically the position of the modes. And so you can look at it. You can look at it in an exact way by using the Heisenberg equation. So you have the evolution for each of the modes of the bus, and you see that the system appears here as a kind of force acting on it. And you can look at when is this R operator becoming non-zero, and what is the value of this, the expectation value of this R operator. And so something important to know is that if your system B remains in a thermal state, it's easy to show that this should remain zero. So the fact that this R is becoming non-zero, it's a signature that you are pushing your bus out of equilibrium, and it will be able to drive the system. Because now if this R has a non-zero expectation value, you can see that HA plus SR is like an effective Hamiltonian for the system A. So it's a good signature to look at. And so what we find, yeah, is that so is that yeah, so you need to look at the condition for this to happen, right? So here there is if you look at the exact evolution, there is a kind of memory kernel here that appears that depends on the details of the what is the dependence on this GK, right? So what is the spectral density of the mass and so on. But what you see basically is that you have, as long as you are able to maintain this S of t non-zero in time, so for example, by driving your system A externally or something like that, you will be able to induce R of t that is non-zero. This is something that is possible, right? And so, and another thing to connect to what I said before is that I mean, the condition to have this R of t non-zero, it's also connected to when you have this, when you are actually displacing the mode. So the mode B of BK are becoming not, are starting to have a coherent displacement in them, and it's more or less the same conditions to have an effective drive on the system. So that's two signatures you can look at. And so one typical way to have this is to have a periodic driving on the system that will induce this S of t to be non-zero or to oscillate. So we can look at, so one example we looked at is we imagine that we have so our system is a spin, and its Hamiltonian is defined by an external magnetic field whose orientation is rotating. So it means that the Hamiltonian will be doing something like that. And so, and the coupling operator is just sigma z, the coupling to the bus. And so it means that you can look at expectation value of sigma z, and from this we can compute the drive we have to the energy you have to put in the drive, but also what is the energy stored in the displacement of the mode of the bus. And because it's a bit like, so it's a bit of conversion of the work spent to the drive into work in the bus. It's something we call the quantum dynamo effect, because it's kind of reminiscent of what you would have in a dynamo. So this is the energy that is stored in the dynamo at the end, and you can compute the efficiency of the process, what fraction of the drive of the work you have spent is converted into this work stored in the bus. And it will be smaller, the efficiency will be smaller than 1, and it's limited because part of the energy that the spin is exchanging with the bus will actually be heat. It will be used to, rather than displacing the mode, it will heat them, it gives them energy variance.
You want to keep the spin going in a regular, case, right? So you have to give resources to make that continue.
Exactly. So, because otherwise, if you stop driving the spin, quickly the displacement will be transformed into a current. Right. The bus will defies, right? So, okay, so then you can have different ways of treating the problem. If you're in the weak coupling regime, we can use Floquet-Markov equation, get some analytical result. And also, so my collaborators on this, so Cyril and our PhD student, Frank Bernard, they have some advanced approach to non-perturbative approach to simulate this heat bus, right? And even when the coupling is large, so this is something they used as well to evaluate these quantities and understand a bit what's happening. So okay, we can simulate so with these different methods and see some kind of some nice agreement when you are at sufficiently weak coupling, and of course deviations when you start to be strongly coupled. And you can use our definitions to compute the efficiency of this. So it's a work-to-work conversion. It's not really it's not a thermal engine, but you can see how the efficiency is changing with respect to the power. So cycles. And see that it only works when it's non-adiabatic. If you do adiabatic cycle, you don't store any work in the dynamo. So you have to be fast enough. Right? Okay, so just to make a summary, so we have this approach to describe energy exchanges between arbitrary quantum systems to handle, for example, autonomous machines, and we can express them as a law of thermodynamics. And So we identify this heat that is related to the thermal part of the part of the energy, or based on the entropy actually, or the initial entropy of the systems. And we have all these non-thermal resources which show that they can be consumed as work to make the same effect as you would expect for consuming work. And you can so as application you can do you can look at small machines where all the elements, including the energy sources, are quantum systems. And you can also look at deviation from the case of ideal heat bath, where you can actually, even though you have a large system at thermal equilibrium, when it interacts with another system, it can receive work, not only heat. And yeah, there are other interactions we want to look at from this. Okay, so we can not try to look at the fluctuation around the average, because all this was just average description so far. So there is we are seeking at the moment to generalize this to look at fluctuation theorems and this kind of thing. So we are interested also in the fact that because we have small machines, maybe we can find a way to have a reversible transformation in a finite time. So exploiting the fact that here we can identify the origin of the irreversibility as the growth of this mutual information between the system and the energy source is coupled to. And so if you have a large energy source, you can't expect to be able to control this growth of mutual information. And you know that the way to be reversible is only to be very slow. But if you have small quantum system, you can, smaller systems, you can be able maybe to engineer the way this correlation grows and try to find some kind of shortcuts to get a reversible transformation after a finite time. And also it's a good approach maybe to look at strong coupling effects on non-Macrovian systems, because here we don't have to make assumptions to derive our thermodynamic law. Everything is principle included. So then it's a question of finding the nice system we can indeed treat analytically or numerically to explore all this, because this is still maybe the limitation of this is that you need to simulate the dynamics, the full dynamics. At least have some information about the bath, right? You need some. You can't just trace over it from the beginning. So thank you for your attention, or the collaborators on this topic. So Camille with a postdoc with me at the Nation, and my collaborators and a group of Cyril.
Thank you, Cyril. Maybe time for a question or two. Yeah.
So I was just trying to understand the definition of ergotropy on slide 35. What's the? Yeah, I mean, what is the intuition behind this taking a supremo, like maximum?
So you have this, you have your system, it is in some state, right? And you want to extract energy out of it using a unitary, right? So you can try several unitary, and for example, it's a qubit, it's somewhere here. There are some unitaries that will actually provide energy to the system, right? These are the ones you don't want, right? Then you might try to make a rotation like this, or maybe a smaller one. I mean, there are many choices of way to extract energy, and what you do is you optimize over all the possible unitaries you could do on your system to find the one that is extracting the more energy. Right? And something I didn't precise that, so there are this passive, it's called passive states. There's the one when any unitary you apply on, you can't extract any energy. So the thermal states are the case, but you can have also, as long as you have a state that has no currencies and whose population are decreasing when energy is increasing, this is a state you can't extract anything from by unitary. So the ergotropy will be 0.
So the trace and everything inside it, sorry, the trace and everything inside it is like energy change.
Yeah, exactly. You can see like this. So you have the state after applying the unitary and before applying the unitary.
Yeah.
Look at the change of energy.
Yeah.
and then you
We maximize the.
so it's a bit of so this is like the formal definition, and but actually you can express this entropy very easily in terms of the eigenstate of O. You can analyze OB and you have a very compact expression.
Maybe one more question.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
So I think the results you showed about the adiabatic driving, I think I mentioned it yesterday, but there's a paper by Indiana and one open where they use Green's function to derive similar results.
Okay.
So so that result holds for both weak and strong coupling because they're using Green's function formalism, and they find out that if you have adiabatic driving, then you don't store anything in the contact region. You need to go beyond adiabatic driving.
Yes.
So I think
I
this,
think it's connected. Yeah.
yes, two different approaches giving.
Okay, let's thank Cyril one more time. I'm going to take him over to the faculty club for lunch. If you want to join us for lunch, you're invited.